I ran out of money. I had £1,000 left, literally. That was, $1,200. And I paid the last paycheck to a sort of a young graduate that was working at the time. I was like, well, I've got one more card left to do to make this work.
One of my guests today was down to his last $1,000 when he came up with a genius growth hack just in time to save his company. Today, Salesflow does millions in revenue. In this episode, I sat down with Besnik Vrellaku, CEO and founder, and Chintan Maisuria, Chief Operating Officer. They share the story of how that came to be and what they've learned along the way. We talk about how they landed their first $1 million in ARR, how to pick the right co-founder, how to execute on winning growth hacks, product validation, building a culture of experimentation, and a whole lot more. But Besnik and Chintan, thanks so much for joining me. This is awesome to have you here in London.
Welcome, and thank you for having us.
The world tour.
Yeah, well, I love it. And thanks, by the way. I don't know if these guys are going to see it, but we got these cool hats and t-shirts.
We're gonna send you pictures.
Yeah, we're gonna 100% gonna tag you and everything.
Yeah, tag you.
Maybe by the time this episode is up, we'll have the shop swell and shop fast, so people can go see the difference between a good and a bad Shopify store.
Yeah, literally, right.
But I was wondering, because as we were doing the research for this, I was obviously on your LinkedIn's.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different roles. You guys have a lot of slugs in the LinkedIn.
You're not wrong though, because he's got advisor here and an advisor there and this and that and
Probably, maybe let me tell you, I don't want it to say this, but I'm 40-year-old, just to let you know. I don't look like.
You turned 40 now. I should know this.
June 11.
If you had said 30.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. You're not that you're gonna be. Okay, I thought I missed your birthday.
So no. So yeah, there's a. Nick started very early in his career. I started very early in my career. Been doing this for 1.5 decades now. Wow. So a lot of experience. So that's why you see a lot of different things.
Was one of your first jobs at Melia Hotels?
Yes.
So how did that's not tech or?
No. So I used to be consultant for them. So I am trained consultant, doing exact same thing. Helping businesses with expansion strategy, segmentation strategy, new business territory. So I did that for 2 years. So I was a part of their new business development team, basically.
Okay.
Helping them expand their UK territory, mainly with the new segmentation. At that time, millennial.
It jumped out at me because I think I'm staying in one of them.
Are you?
Yeah.
Which one? Me.
Me.
Yeah. So me was the innovation of this external consultants who we were basically.
Okay.
So I used to be part of that one boutique consulting firm. So like as I said, I'm trained management consultant.
Okay.
I come from engineering background and then MBA, and I did this consulting for 2 years, and then I left, and I don't wanted to go back.
To consulting.
I still do consulting,
Yeah.
but now mainly for tech companies only.
Okay.
And then Nick and I started working from like 1.5 years now. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, but still the same work. Yeah, but not corporate anymore.
Nice. And Besnik, you founded, was it London Tech Vibe? Is that what Chintan's talking about? Is that your start in college, or was there something before that?
But dude, I had it started when I was quite a fat kid at school, and I really wanted a pizza, and I had no money. I came from a very modest family, and I really wanted that pizza. So I was like, how am I going to pay for that pizza? And so I started selling stuff at school. So that was my journey. And then I was like 15 years old. But before then, yeah, I had a games website. I had 8 different MVPs before we had Salesflow. So London Tech Vibe was a sort of media kind of company for the tech scene. Okay. I was heavily involved there. I did a big thesis on the likes of TransferWise, GoCardless. I met some of the founders from Estonian co-founders. I interviewed them at the early stages. I just wish I was Warren Buffett. I would have put money right then and there. I said to them they're going to grow. I told them. and it was very interesting. So that's how London Tech Vibe was.
When was this?
2011.
Okay.
Very early of transfer days. 2011, 12. I almost forgot. I mean, it's just ages ago. So some time ago.
And then you said that your paths converged like a year and a half ago. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
And so you were consulting. What were you?
So I started with Nick taking care of growth thing, head of growth, and now I look after growth, product, and the strategy piece. So
At Salesflow.
at Salesflow. So
He's COO.
COO. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but between Melia and Nick, I had like different things that I was working on, like different ventures, and again the consulting piece. But my consulting was mainly around validation, so inception to 10 million
Okay.
in revenue. That's my sweet spot. So majority of the time, I work with business, or I work in the business who is looking for validation of the product. So they can incept the business. They're looking for product market fit, so they can go from 0 to, I would say, 2 million, 3 million. And then it's up to 10 million is pretty much like growth and scale. So kind of like helping them with the diversification of the products, streamlining their growth channels, mainly performance marketing.
Yeah.
Because I come from that like engineering background, so I'm very good with the numbers.
Got
so
it.
quant models. And,
I concur.
yeah.
Because and the reason I say that, because I don't think I've ever, I mean, it's like you have a canvas that of opportunity, and some guy is very good at painting, the other's really good at just, I don't know, laying the foundations perhaps. And I don't think I've ever met anyone knows math the way you do when it comes to valid. I mean, this
Really?
guy, yeah, I mean, I've over the last years, I've worked with 100+ people. I'm not even kidding you. You know, variety of different startups. You know, in the past, and then Chintan, I was like, he went from just being growth to just now pretty much leading the business overall. You know, COO in a matter of 6 months. And then we became close friends as well. And there's a lot of other products, you know, collectively as co-owners, we pushing forward beyond what we're doing right now, which is quite exciting as well.
How did you? So Chintan. So then, if I get that right, you were consultant, Melia Hotels. Then it sounded like from there, consulting for a lot of early stage startups.
Yeah, that's right. So,
On the marketing side, focused.
mainly on the marketing side at that point of times, but mainly validating these businesses. So, you know, back in 2012, 2013, there were like floods of new businesses came in into the market.
Yeah.
And at that point, you know, there was this thing, that validation of ideas. So I used to provide the data signals.
You're like the Grim Reaper of ideas.
Yeah, so
bring
I...
Chintan
That's
in to see
a
if
very
it
good.
sucks.
I just realized what does he mean his idea? No, he's a Grim Reaper. No, it's true though, because it's the validation point is literally the gateway to yay or nay.
So I used to do this for a bunch of startups via accelerators, incubators. So I used to be the part of those accelerators like WeWork Labs, Techstars,
Okay.
UK Lebanon Tech Hub. And then I got an opportunity to work with a couple of innovation labs doing exact same thing, but with the corporate labs.
Okay.
So NetWest was one of it. So they used to, and they still run innovation lab, where they found a bunch of different products which can turn into individual businesses and startups. So I used to help them with the validation piece. Give them a data signals that whether it is worth pursuing or not. And if it is, then they can invest more money and build MVP. And then from there, go to GTM. So Pre-Hype was one of them. So I used to work as a contractor for them.
No way. Nicholas was on the podcast 2 days ago.
I saw that on your list. I forgot to tell you.
Okay, that's cool.
And Coty, makeup and beauty brand. So yeah. And I did that. I worked with like almost 100+ businesses. And that's why I still do advisory every now and then. Of course, non-monetary thing, but mainly helping them with the advice on which product to pursue, and the growth, mainly the channels, what to focus on, how much to reinvest, basically.
There's like a question I want to ask you based on what Besnik said, but you just keep saying interesting stuff. So I'm I'm wondering, 100 companies, and you were specifically brought in to help, like you said, validate the ideas.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there anything that you learned from that experience that jumps out at you as far as commonalities between the ones that you validated or the ones that then like found product market fit and made it versus the ideas that didn't at the idea stage? I mean, that's pretty hard to know before you've kind of gone out there and really sold, but maybe that's part of it. So I'm curious what you learned from that and how that influences you today with the stuff you're doing at Salesflow. And
I think the thing is like, if you look at the broader learning, which is more around the playbooks that I built by working with this 100+ businesses. But if you ask me for the learnings for a specific, like from a specific businesses, it's very difficult because the things that work probably in 2015-16, that's not working now.
Yeah.
And there is a reason, not because, of course, there is a technology changed or AI came in or anything, but because the generation changed as well. At that time, we were targeting millennials, and now we are targeting the same group of segment, but their behavior is very different. Like, for example, Gen Z, they are more content,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of gratitude compared to millennials at the age of 25, probably.
Right.
So what I've learned is I build a playbook that, okay, if I do this, then there is a good chances, the probability that this will happen, and data will never lie at the end of the day. And that's what we kind of, not only with Salesflow, but other products that we will build eventually in the future. That's what we're putting, the learnings that, okay, how do we validate the products? Do we want to pursue this or not? And how do we see the data? Because having the data is just not enough, right? To understand the behavior and the trends within the data. Because sometimes data can, it's not going to lie, but you can go into that rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a playbooks that we built, that, okay, from 0 to, I would say, 100,000, you have this one playbook. From 100,000 to 2 million, you have another playbook. And from 2 million to probably like 5 million, 6 million, another playbook, right? I'm a big fan of, and Nick would agree with me, and this is something we were discussing literally before this podcast, predictability, right? Because I think that, especially when you are up to 10 million in a business, you need to have a predictability in a business, because you don't have a cash or capital.
What do you mean by that? Like just a
Predictability
guaranteed
in
channel, or a channel you've kind of
exactly
optimized that's working?
exactly, and you can relate to me.
Scalability,
Yeah,
maybe.
you would
That's-
relate to me.
Yeah.
Because it's all about like you bringing the business, which is predictable, at which is like CAC is, the crack, the churn, the AOV.
It's,
Yeah.
it's the unit economics to scale, because I always wondered sometimes firstly, even back in the days when you sort of making, just started making your first 100K, or how do companies get to a million bootstrapped, is you ultimately, when you test out so many channels, because one thing is to test ideas and concept, a whole nother thing is to test the growth strategies and the channels that's going to work for what you do. And sometimes, where we share a lot of similarities, we validate concepts in a very similar way, but in different approaches. And that's how we, why we work so well together, is because we have this kind of mentality where test fast and quickly, either if it's a fail or a win. But no, because it's a learning, and then you know what to exclude and move on to the next, even if it's failed.
So the similarity is that you guys test fast and,
Yes.
and learn fast. What's the difference?
So there's, like you were talking about earlier, about derivatives and the numbers, and then there's the VC approach, the numbers, analytics, and then there's this kind of less intangible method to experimentation of the market, of the feel, of what words are telling you versus what numbers are telling you, whether that's feedback from people, the market, or I don't know, users, or maybe just where you believe the problem lays. There's sometimes you want to really understand how painful the problem is for someone to know how much they're
From
going
the
to pay.
user perspective when
The
you're talking about
user.
a product.
Yes. Yeah. And that, because obviously you're validating products here versus just validating channels, a slightly different, I think, model. But for the way I look at it and sort of really experiment, because when you had 8 MVPs, like obviously I was learning tech, I knew so much about tech, and started to like yourself, you're speaking with a lot of businesses, like you are inherently learning different stories, but firsthand, right? And it's the same when I was interviewing plenty of people back in the day when I had like the tech vibe. Looking back, what a terrible, shitty name, but it's still, it still did wonders for me. But I think it's to do with both. You have to, not just that derivative mindset of investing, but also that intangible side of, okay, is it scalable? You look at the other metrics as a business model for validation, because sometimes a product can validate, it's gonna go, but is it really gonna be monetized correctly? Can it scale? Like, where do you want to go as an individual? Like, I had all these questions that I asked each time I build those MVPs. I'm like, where do I want it to go? And that's how I landed in SaaS, was because this was back in 2015, right? It was still relatively hot or emergent, well, kind of emergent space, but not as much as now, where it just became paramount to me that that's going to be the next thing that I want to focus on. Because I had OBD ports, kind of software, hardware, and I was like, no, that's not going to work. Like, it's not scalable, and you need a lot of money for Bootstrap to work. And we had a games website, or then we sort of worked on a few different other software pieces that were in brick and mortar, for example. And that was tricky. So then landed in content flow, for example. At least, obviously, there's a whole backstory to that, where then, okay, I was like, in SaaS, I got to focus on this. And it just, we ended up, having over 10,000 different beta users at the beginning, and then we sort of we had that. We ended up selling it to a competitor at that time. It was like big,
Contentflow.
yeah, Contentflow. You can see where Salesflow now came from.
Yeah.
I really branched out creatively, didn't I?
But so what's the backstory there that you're cryptically alluding to?
No, I it's not. It's just more to say that I think you have to be crazy enough to experiment, not just channels, but products, especially if you're bootstrapping.
Right.
Because you're going to bootstrap. If you are that kind of, focus on bootstrapping, you got to make sure this business is going to work, and you got to quickly understand what isn't, just based on whatever data you have. I mean, at that time, I didn't have an expert or a consultant or advisor. You got to do your validation yourself.
Right.
Ultimately. And
you have to do a lot of things yourself when you're bootstrapping.
Yeah, but when you were doing 8 MVPs, and I'm gonna go and have this mentality each year, I'm gonna do one, and either I'm gonna go with it or I'm not. That's my mindset at the time. Is I said to myself, okay, I want to go and work this business, build a quick MVP, and understand, okay, what does it meet a certain level criteria where I want it to be. So I set that criteria myself about the ideal scenario of a business that I want to focus on. And if it didn't meet, 4 out of 5, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to fail it quickly, intentionally, not unintentionally, where something's gone wrong, and move on to the next thing.
So these 8 MVPs, over what period of time was that?
Oh, I'd say 7 to 10 years.
Okay. And how many of these did you two work together on?
We didn't. We met a year and a half
ago.
Yeah.
So
slightly different stories, but also indirectly sort of relevant in validation. Because
and do you have any kind of engineering background, or do you write any code yourself?
I did computing in even school, right? Okay. Java at the beginning, but I didn't enjoy it. I like the commercial piece of business, which is just more on anything commercial, really. So I did it, but I didn't enjoy it. So I just offshored a lot of the things that I developed.
Okay.
I developed the first website and the gaming site that I did, for example, but then I liked to find growth hacking. My skill set was growth hacking.
So you said the first 1 or 2 you built the MVP, and then from there you offshored it or figured it out.
Or co-founders, other co-founders.
Or co-founders.
Yeah.
So how did you I feel like that's something interesting there is when you're bootstrapping, how do you build an MVP, especially if you don't want to write the code, or for a lot of people that don't know how to do that, how did you go about that? Do you have any kind of set process there, or is it different case by case, or like what does that look like building an MVP and not kind of outsourcing it in that way?
Well, it really depends on your personal circumstances, right? Because everybody will have a different savings and different risk appetite. They might have the ability to meet different co-founders, or as a CTO or even CFO at times, right? They could be each case. So I think it depends. But I think at the beginning, you want to de-risk as much as possible and quickly release something, even if it's not the core product, and very quickly, because most offshore companies have a process to quickly churn out MVPs. Because even if you have a CTO or co-founder as an alternative way, for example, I've had bad experiences with this where someone's got a full-time job, they don't want to risk it, they don't want to leave it, they don't want to, go ahead and take the same risk that you have, for example, and then you're better off just going to offshore company and spending that money versus waiting 2 years.
Right.
And then by that time, your enthusiasm for taking that to market is diminished. So I think for a lot of businesses, it just depends on your circumstances. If you're going to find a partner that typically is willing to go all in with you, that's the ideal scenario, because then you have a team, you're motivated, you've got each other's back. But if that's not the case, at least have a part-time CTO to monitor the offshore guys to get it right. That worked very well for me in the past, where I got a guy to consult, and then ultimately some of them, after the product was developed, validation was proven, right, where money was being generated, then that CTO sort of joined in full-time, at least for my experience.
So how many of these 8 ideas or businesses, how many of them did you do solo versus with a co-founder?
I'd say 50% roughly. Yeah, around, so at least 4, 5 I did completely by myself, and the others were split between 2 different co-founders in the past.
Okay.
So yeah, that's typically been the case.
What did you learn about picking a co-founder? I mean, I came out of the same womb as my co-founder, so it made the selection process a little bit easier. He's my
my
brother
family.
and I. My brother and I.
Nice.
So we have a I say we have a philosophical alignment at a pretty deep level there from a lot of shared experiences, but assuming not that.
Yeah.
How do you pick a co-founder when it's not someone that you know that? Maybe you know them that deeply. I don't know, or like, how do you do it when?
It's like saying, how'd you pick your wife? Like I'm not joking, right? What like? There was this app actually called Shaper a long time ago. It was Shaper. It was a network like Tinder like.
I agree.
App. Yeah, do you remember that?
I know.
It was
Shaper?
Shaper. Yeah, it was called Shaper with an R instead of an ER at the end.
Mm.
I don't know where they've gone, by the way. Are they still around?
Not sure.
But
sure.
they-
But
they-
I know.
It was a network app. It was a bit like LinkedIn, trying to compete against LinkedIn, and but in a Tinder-like format of swiping,
Okay.
right? So
For finding co-founders? Or?
yeah, partners,
Yeah.
businesses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not even joking you. It was like
Yeah.
it's like, hi, how you doing? I'm doing good. You want to make some money? Back to your question, I think at least my view, and Chintan and others all have a different view, and ultimately, it does come down to variety of skill sets. Like, can you complement each other? Firstly, a skill set. That's going to matter. That's the fundamental piece, right? That's going to it's a good foundation to you both working well, because each of you will now know what your responsibilities are.
Right.
The second thing, I think, like anything else, what makes, back to a solid girlfriend or wife is can you actually be friends with them? Because whilst most people say is it transactional, like when you're a co-founder, I think it's long term. It's not good if you have transactional. Well, like in terms of relationship, it's business and that's it. We'll keep aside. But I think it's important for longevity that you can both get along very well and have a sense of being. If you read a lot of philosophy, can you reason when shit hits the fan in business?
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest test. I mean, you even if you have a partner, if a problem in your life happens, like, are you able to handle these problems accordingly? So it's the same thing. I mean, when we sit down, we have a problem. We both have a different perspective because we're still perhaps similar but different characters, same as of our journey. So that's very complementary, for example. So I think that really it's about, can you reason Can you respect each other in different ways? And skill set ultimately. And at the end of the day, bootstrap businesses and growing business is tough. It's hard. And let's not put aside the fact that it can become a shitstorm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I
Absolutely.
would say. It's vague, philosophical, but at least that's from my own experience. That's what I believe
In
to
fact,
be.
running business is tough anyway.
Yeah. What's your view on it, Chintan? I'm picking a
Yeah.
co-founder.
I think
Any words of wisdom?
yeah, I agree with Nick. I think skill set, yes, definitely, because that's the whole purpose, that everyone comes with a
You don't want to have the
complementary.
same skills.
Yeah, and I think for me, other than respect, which is super important, yes, cultural thing as well. I think cultural, not cultural, as in like ex- more about the work culture.
Okay.
I would say, because sometimes what happens
Totally.
is if you have a different work culture, or if you believe in a different work culture, it's not going to work, right?
It's going to get uncomfortable when you have to start
Exactly.
hiring employees and setting the values and setting the culture.
Exactly. Because eventually you're not going to be just a startup. You're going to
Right.
grow as a business, and you will have to put the cultural roots as well for your team and other peers to follow. So yes, and then of course respect, like as Nick said, and the skill sets which are complementary with each other.
So, how did your paths converge?
Well, I guess maybe you want to explain it on your end, but we just I think we met. I think when I was looking for
On Shapo. Was it Shapo?
Shapo. Shapo. We're gonna relaunch that Shapo to Shapo. I think.
Well, what did you say?
Shaper is Shaper.
Shaper,
No, but
okay.
you're right. It's Shaper. No, it wasn't there. No.
No, we were. I can. Yeah. So we, Nick was in a business. It's Salesflow is at a very interesting stage from a lot of different things, and I think growth is playing a vital role at this stage of the business.
You mean not now, but when you guys met?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and even now, of
Yeah.
course, even now, and the most important thing is like at that point, Nick was looking for someone, and that's how we met, and then we spoke, and then we decided, hey, I can jump in. I have that skill set which I can bring in on the table to help business grow from what it is now to let's say a few like a different ARR, and then of course the product thing, that was something Nick wanted to do in Salesflow, like branching out to different products to expand the product line, and that's something where I come in as well, like not only validating those products but making sure that those products are MVP ready, and then from MVP to GTM ready. So, and at that stage, we thought that okay, we can work together very well. I saw at that point Salesflow, and even now I see that it's doing well, and I see the good future. So, and I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's join the forces. Let's do this together. Yeah.
So it sounds like then you're on this, tell me if I get it wrong, qualitative side. You're trying to like live the customer pain point and figure out what product to build or features to add from there.
You could say that.
And then Chintan is playing Grim Reaper.
He's a quantitative. I'm qualitative.
Okay, the quantitative and the qualitative, and you're bringing the
That's-
feature idea to Chintan, and you're like, how does it look? And it's just like, whoosh.
It's overlapping. That's really it. But he loves numbers. I mean, I know finance and numbers, but he really knows it incredibly well, and he'll be the gatekeeper when it comes to a lot of that side of things as well. And yeah, in that sense, so it's more of commercial complementary than technically, So yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm always fascinated, like how, especially bootstrap businesses, how did you get the first 100 customers, or maybe the first 10? I don't know, or both, first 10 and
I
first
guess your
100.
favorite question, right?
It is because it's just because I've done it quite a few times.
Yeah. You have it down to a science now, or is it different every time?
I do from a qualitative perspective. You should have came to my live 10 years ago, Chintan, and it would have been a different. We would have had billions by now. So, but I think what quite a few different ones had different ways we got a few customers. It's always through growth hacking. Each one had a different story, ultimately to get the first customers. But it's always to do things in an incredibly resourceful way with zero money. What that means is how can you leverage all the channels that are out there through content, like even content flow. For example, there's money, but I'll stick to the most sort of last 6 years. Is I completely growth hacked Twitter. All right.
How?
We just used random tools online that were we used this tool called Deliver, for example, to auto-create content based on hashtags. Then we used auto-follow, auto-tweet, auto-retweet, all these particular keywords.
How long ago was this?
This was 7 years ago.
This shit would not fly today.
No. Elon Musk, he wasn't around, so he would... it wouldn't fly, but I mean, like, that's the whole point of growth hacking, is finding different ways. You completely bootstrap. You're not going to spend 10 grand on Twitter ads.
What was your favorite growth hack then in the early days?
Oh God, to be honest, that was my favorite. That worked quite well.
The
That's
Twitter
why,
one.
because
so what auto post content? But this was like, you didn't have ChatGPT, so
actually
what kind of content
that was fine. It was more to do with the auto follow, auto like. The engagement was ridiculous because no one was doing it right back then. They didn't even know it existed.
Yeah.
So I think it's about being an early adopter to growth hacks.
Yeah, I remember this with Instagram in the early days. You just go follow a bunch of people, and you'd have like a 20% conversion rate to follow.
The difference is this is B2B, right?
Yeah.
You're not harassing personal people so you're right there. It might work to a lot of marketing agencies I know have done it, but now I won't just say it's
Not us.
saturated. The thing is, sometimes certain growth hacks are short-lived.
Right.
If you're going to grow, not all, and then you capture that window of opportunity because no one else is doing it, and all of a sudden it's uncharted territory of God knows what growth you can get.
Yeah.
We got huge amounts of growth from it, like massive. For example, so that was how we got those 10,000 plus users in a short space of time. That was for content flow.
But so you followed them on Twitter. I mean, then what did you do to get them as a customer?
Well, I mean, it's just like when you end up, being on a street and you end up just slapping somebody, they're going to notice. I know, terrible. I know. You would realize my ridiculous sense of humor, but if it's the same, you follow them, like them, they take notice, right? Ultimately, and they go onto your link on your page, and you just drive traffic. So that's typically how it worked.
Okay.
At least that was based on the data that we looked at, for example. And then, of course, they signed up. Then we ended up building the customer over time, obviously completely free at the beginning, because we just wanted to focus building an audience, a database. And of course, after that, we downside that growth hack. But in terms of first customers with Salesflow, for example, it's and this one we invested a lot of money again. I just multiplied into other businesses. So what happened next on Salesflow, I remember this was Christmas, and it's a true story. I invested whatever money that I had, and we were only 3 people. And it was near Christmas time, and I ran out of money. I had £1,000 left, literally. That was, $1,200, right? $1,200, and I paid the last paycheck to a young graduate that was working at the time. And I was like, well, I've got one more card left to do to make this work, because I've invested a lot of products in Bootstrap. This is the situation you're under when you're Bootstrap. Then what I'm going to do? So what happened was I spent the last 2 weeks trying to understand what am I going to do that really going to change the lever of this business that we just finished out of the product. We're now going. So I ended up, we had a few customers, but we had other business expenses, right? Even at the start. So then what happened was I reached out to a guy called Josh Fetcher. He had a massive Facebook group. And I saw the product. He absolutely fell in love with our Zapier. I thought to myself, well, how am I going to be different to other tools at that time? And then I had one tactic to do. Okay, I want to use Zapier to create a workflow, so we can, once you have their data, you're able to then create a lookalike audience to then really target them in an account-based approach. It was just a tactic, because that was the anchoring point to win someone over, to promote you.
Like showing someone what they could do with Salesflow.
Yeah, it's a hack. He was a growth hacker, like crazy. Yeah. And I was like a menace of growth hacking at that point, right? Because I had the tools to growth hack itself, right? Never mind the products. So how to grow that And then I worked with Josh Fairchild and we created an ebook together. He loved it. And then he posted on his Facebook group in January. And that month, just to get that cash in, we just exploded. And a true effing story, And it was, I was overwhelmed. Like, it was astonishing moment for me, actually, because of all the 8 years, I reinvested, and had 1K left, and that one tactic worked. And I never forget it, because it was emotional and also exciting, because I finally approached a method, or at least approached not just a product but also a strategy. So we grew, by the way, of Facebook groups. Right, these are not something people have said. Oh, we grew, and we grew. So in the next 2 years, it wasn't just Facebook group, but in the first year, we in 12 months we hit our first million in ARR in the first year. Boosters that year from Facebook groups. Period. Who would have thought you just grow their business off Facebook groups? So that was the story, and then after that we just sort of doubled and onwards, really.
Wow, down to the wire, and then all in.
You can call my mom right now, because I was living with my parents until I was 28. Okay, because I was Do you think you can live in London and bootstrap all these businesses? I just want to tell you the sacrifices beyond that, right? I was still with my parents. I'm a family sort of oriented guy anyway, right? From my culture, but yeah, it's that was true story, and I never forget it, to be honest.
So that's the favorite growth hack.
Yeah.
Have you ever had one just blow up in your face?
That was the blow up. that was the blow. I mean, that was the blow up. Was working on that ebook in Facebook groups.
No, I mean in a bad way, like one where you're like, oh fuck.
Wow. I mean, Salesflow's had a few blow ups like that. So, and to be honest, growth hacks. I mean, I don't know, Chintan, any. I
don't mean to make you relive the bad memories after.
No, I think we've burnt quite a lot of money in my personal view in ads. Sometimes you can burn 50, 100 grand just like that in a couple of weeks or a month if you just don't have your. Now this is before he joined, by the way.
Chintan's like, no, I didn't. What are you talking about?
No, I had to clarify it, because
it's
because
like
your performance marketing, right?
Yeah.
I know. So you know. So
it's easy to.
And this is you're gonna love, like, this side of things, and I'm gonna let Chintan perhaps elaborate further. But before Chintan came, we've done a lot of wells. But then, if you don't have the right sort of partners who are looking after you, because it was a big growth channel for us, right? It works. And but certain numbers, when it added up, and I realized actually we've been burning through cash. By the way, okay, this is a bootstrap business. If you can't take control, that's why I was looking for somebody to take care of it, because I know the numbers did add up at one point, and now we had to downscale it until we can find what worked. So, and then Chintan's been sort of.
I think the word is attribution. So I think when you would know, because you do the performance marketing. So it's super important if you're running performance marketing, because it's a lot of money. It's like a stock, right?
Yeah.
You're investing so much money.
Totally.
So you need to attribute, because it's only then you can scale it. So I think that was the issue, where the things were not rightly attributed, and especially SaaS, right?
Yeah.
It's a recurring revenue. It's not like an e-commerce business that one-time transaction and then we will fix it next month.
Yeah.
So it's a SaaS recurring revenue. We need to know where the attribution is. So first click, last click, whatever model you want to build, basically.
How do you? One thing that is interesting to see sometimes is that you need to have really good attribution.
Yeah.
And it needs to be, set up in such a way that, technically it's set up and within best practices and it's done well, and you can do interesting stuff now with like event-based analytics on the site and other stuff like that. But there's also, we often find, like, there's a line where you also have to be able to take a step back and look at, like, some of the most successful companies that we see that are from a paid perspective. It's because they understand, like, blended CAC at a high level.
Yeah.
And so they because you know,
His favorite
because
second
it's
word.
really easy for attribution to lie to you, right? And like the one that I, and I'll stop trying to lead this question too much, but this is less of a question and more something that I'm just curious your thoughts on, is that like Google is a perfect example. You'll often see like in the LinkedIn echo chamber, everyone's always all pissed off about like how much waste there is in Google ads. And I could go on about this because it's then you go look at the company and it's like they have some junior marketing manager running it. And it's like, okay, well, would you let a junior person be deploying millions of dollars of capital elsewhere in your business? But either way, but the point that I'm getting at is that with something like that, the counter argument is, oh, well, Google's just like absorbing all this attribution credit, right? But then on the other hand, it's like, well, you're running Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads, you're doing all these things to create awareness of the product. Maybe they didn't click there, but that was the action, immeasurable. You can't measure it, right? And then they went and Googled the product. And then someone will say like, oh, well, they went and Googled the product. Why would you run the Google ad? Well, it's because if you don't, your competitor's going to do it, right?
100%.
And so it's like, we love to see that when it's like we have a client and there's a competitor, and the competitor is spending heavily on like social or really good demand gen motion or whatever, but they're not running on search. It's like, okay, we'll come in and buy that, buy those customers. So the point being, like, how do you, as an analytical kind of quantitatively minded person, how do you balance that, focus on the attribution to optimize the channel while still taking a step back to like knowing how the internet works, to be like, okay, well, we also have to look at it in a kind of blended logical perspective, and knowing the numbers can lie.
Yeah. No, I think it's first of all, it's a great question. So one of the things that I personally do is balancing the attribution window across both channels. What I mean by this is, like with the Facebook, previously they just used to do 1-day click and 7-day view.
Yeah.
Now they allow 1-day click and 28-day view. Same thing with the Google as well. Google now, they introduced their new attribution, which is above 90 days. So you can attribute up to 120 days. Yeah. So this needs to be balanced. That's one. The second thing is, it also depends on your strategy. Like, as you rightly mentioned, like Facebook can be used as a brand awareness piece, right? And if they are in the first 30 days or 27 days, the attribution window, and then if they click on your brand campaign, which is running on the Google, because they say, hey, I came across to this amazing ad, but I'm not ready, or maybe I'm doing something. And then probably next day, or probably after 7 days, he realized, hey, I came across to this Salesflow ad. Let me search. What was that? Salesflow? Yeah, I'm going to type it. So one of the things that we see in some of our campaigns is brand campaign doing very well. And it's not because we have an amazing brand or anything, but it's because we have a brand awareness campaign that's running. But that's the thing. Like, attribution view window, that needs to be balanced across both places. Click is all good because you can always measure first click and the last click, but view needs to be tackled as well. The best rule of thumb, I personally think, is the 60 days. So Facebook, they don't allow, but Google, they do. So 60-day is a reasonable period. It also depends on your sales cycle. Like, how long is your sales cycle? Some businesses, their sales cycle is like literally 7 days if it is not a very high ticket product. Some businesses, they can take up to 60 days, 70 days. So it's all about the attribution balancing as well, and then tracking, and then sourcing it with that specific user who came into the ecosystem. And then we looking at the whole journey, that, okay, they now came through Facebook ads. Now they're still exploring and doing certain things, but they're coming back again with a brand campaign, probably on the Google, and then awareness campaign or webinar or automated flow or lot of different things, right?
What are your, so we talk about Meta, or Facebook, Meta, and Google. You guys also advertise on LinkedIn, I guess, or?
No, we don't.
No.
We don't, but it's a pretty similar attribution they have as well.
I'm curious, why no LinkedIn?
I think it was the CAC.
So
The CAC was
couple of reasons, actually. One of the reasons, two main reasons. One is, of course, the CAC is very high.
Very expensive.
on LinkedIn. And the second reason is we are LinkedIn software, so we want to bring them via our software. It defeats the purpose, right?
Okay.
Technically,
There's
if
like
you
a
look
brand consideration there.
not a brand consideration, but like the whole purpose of doing LinkedIn ads is to bring in more leads. But we can do the same thing as a software.
Okay.
So
Makes sense.
it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
So of why you want to have Salesflow doing the same thing that you can do the same thing with LinkedIn ads as well. So that's one of the reasons. That's what we have to play by the books, right? So sometimes this Facebook is doing ads on LinkedIn and LinkedIn is doing ads on Facebook. But what I'm trying to say is like we don't do ads on LinkedIn, CAC mainly, and the second reason is like okay, it defeats the purpose of us, our USP. Our USP is like bringing the leads from the LinkedIn. So,
or outreach, or our prospecting versus advertising.
Exactly. And the one important thing is like we are very heavy on intent channels rather than the non-intent channels. When I say intent as being Google, it's because there's huge TAM. Like, sales engagement, not only Salesflow or LinkedIn automation. The whole sales engagement is a huge TAM, right? There's a lot of demand already out there. There's a huge volume for hundreds of different keywords. So, even if you spend like 100 grand on this sales engagement as a business, not Salesflow, but sales engagement warmly and everything, basically, it's still going to be less.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's the LinkedIn Facebook one is one that I always find interesting because a lot of times when we come in to or like start work, especially in PLG SaaS, right? Like, because we have some like enterprise clients where you're talking about like, 60, 70 day sales cycle. I mean, it could be 16 months, 18 months. So of course there will be a little difference, but like PLG SaaS, often it seems, and in performance marketing, like there's very few rules. Everything needs to be tested by the business and they're always going to perform differently. But oftentimes Meta ends up being one of the best performing channels. And the reason that I'm interested in your strategy there is because there's this analysis that I have our team refresh often. And if someone in the comments knows an automated way to do this, let me know, because I don't, we'll take like a representative list of the PLG companies, which the one that I typically use is like, have you guys seen the Peer Signal list? Are you familiar with Peer Signal? They have this list that they keep up in like an Airtable. It's like all the PLG companies basically.
Yeah.
And so I'll take that list and filter out the companies that have more than like 1,000 employees, because at some point you're advertising on every channel. It's not a strategic decision at that point. It's just our budgets are so big that we have something going everywhere.
Yeah.
So we filter it down a little bit and we look at like the PLG companies in a certain space. And it ends up being like 1,500 companies or 1,000 to 1,500 companies. And we'll have our team go through each Facebook page individually to look at page transparency and see if they're advertising on Facebook. And we'll do the same on LinkedIn. And the thing that's interesting about this is that I don't have the exact number in my head, right? But in B2B, it's about 80% of them are advertising on LinkedIn, which, as we were just talking about, is like the most expensive inventory on the internet for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's almost the exact inverse, that about 80% of them are not advertising on Meta. It strikes me that it is such a slept-on channel for B2B. And I've even done this in our outbound efforts. Like, because I'll always like, in outbound a lot of times, because we're an agency, right? So it's like, what's your, externally, that we're all the same, no one cares. And so I'll often ask a question. And one of the ones that I've done in sort of a research perspective is like, well, email people or LinkedIn message people, why aren't you advertising on Meta? Like, I notice you're not. And the answers you get often are like, oh, our customers aren't there, or my favorite is like, we don't want to bother people on a personal channel. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, I buy a lot of SaaS. We're like trying to stop.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I'm not against it, and I think it's just where if you get your money returned better in ads intent versus Facebook, right? Not because not everybody can have that volume of search in their problem solutions. That's the difference, right? But if you do, then it makes sense. But I totally agree. If you enter in a blue ocean tool where you need to generate demand or cold outreach, it totally
100%.
works. Because I do. If you go on Instagram, like I'm a CEO of a company, I go on Instagram. Like,
how often do you see something and you're like, oh, that's interesting?
Yeah. And by the way, if you look at all the things I follow, they're not just, random things. There are news content, there are technologies. So I in fact, I can't remember the last time I've been on Facebook. I think it's Instagram, right? Yeah. Like, no one goes on Facebook anymore. Yeah. Facebook groups is not a channel that I can grow now. 3-4 years ago. So I think Instagram definitely.
Meta should sponsor this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
No, you rightly said. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, Max, that Facebook is for you and for your clients gonna be one of the best channels. Basically, I wouldn't be. Of course, there are like 2 billion people on Meta, including all the different products they have, Facebook and
Is it 2 billion?
Instagram. Yeah, 2 billion, 1.9. 1.9.
Talking
No,
about-
what I was saying is, like, Meta, of course, everyone is on Meta, right?
Yeah.
But it all depends on the objective and what's the product, right? Like, I don't need to. I'm not saying that I don't need to be. We do ads on Meta as well, but the whole objective of running the ads on the Meta is different, and especially your product. That's where this, again, intent signals, data signals are gonna come, and validation of the product is come. So if your product or if your business, if there is already demand out there, you don't need to create the demand.
Yeah.
Meta is the product. Other than lifestyle e-commerce businesses, if you're running for the SaaS, Meta and LinkedIn, they both are the channels that can help you drive the demand or create the demand. People might not, so they have a pain that they don't know that they have a pain. So you as a business come in and they say, hey, you have a pain, you need this pill, and we're gonna give you this pill, right? That's where this Meta and LinkedIn ads come in, and they do wonders. And with a touch of PLG, because with PLG they're gonna learn, and like, it's a product-led growth, so they're gonna do everything by themselves, and they're gonna start absorbing the learnings from what they have done on the product, and eventually they're going to become evangelists. So, it's all start with this Meta, LinkedIn ads, creating a demand, coming to the product, driving them via webinar or ebook or anything, making sure that they use the product. So build the product in a way that they use the product, and then they stay with you. But, some of the businesses, they don't need to do this. They can just simply go with intent, if already demand out there. So that's going to cut down your sales cycle.
Yeah.
And with a touch of PLG, it's kind of like an accelerator of the whole the process, basically.
Totally. Yeah, I think the other thing that's interesting, and again, it's like stuff like this where you just have to think about it like more of like a logic problem, because it would be impossible to validate. No one would have the data set. But it's like right now it feels like on LinkedIn everyone's bitching about intent data, which, like, I feel like they should have been a long time ago. But it's just like, this one pisses me off, because you'll, as like someone that has to fight for marketing budget from these companies, it's like the amount of money that gets wasted on intent data. And then if we just think about it, it's like, okay, every website on the internet that matters is pixeled by Meta.
Yeah.
Every person buying anything on the internet, for all in aggregate, 2 billion people or whatever on Meta, they all have, Meta on their computer, on their phone, whatever.
100%.
And then you just think about it, and you're like, okay, well, so if Meta knows that if I'm considering like SaaS provider A versus SaaS provider B, you don't think Meta is connecting the dots there to make sure that, like, put that ad, oh, you're considering B, let's also put the ad of A in front? Like, how much better off would these companies have been if they had just taken that budget of intent data and just put it into some Meta ads? And okay, you won't have a report that lies to you and makes you feel like you have this edge.
Yeah.
Instead, you're just going to have like the people going to your website and making a decision. Like, I take that route.
Yeah.
That's me.
No, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts here, Chintan, are, but I think the last time one of the reasons why we worked with even, or partnered up with the Warmly guys, Alan and Max, is because it was a growth hack, ultimately, right? It's not your ads. Absolutely, I think I agree there. If you just retarget your audience and you make the most out of your dollar spent on advertisement anyway, because you still retarget with you still retarget or find lookalikes on Meta, right? Are they not calling it Facebook anymore already? I'm getting.
We always call it Facebook, but
Facebook,
I'm trying
right?
to say Meta.
Meta, that's it. Meta. Yeah,
it
no.
feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, yeah, me too. My gut just took a twist a little bit. I was like, Meta. I've never said that before. But you're right. I think we tried. That's why we worked with, because it's to do with leveraging your traffic on your website at the end of the day. And that's why we integrated instantly with the first probably company to kind of do this. I mean, we know Leadfeed and others that Warmly have done, and obviously they've done their twist to it. You know, in the UK, lead enrichment and data intent on those, because it's going to your website. You can't get more intent than someone searching your website, really, right? It's just also about how can you drive more traffic to that. It's a pitch, and then leverage that from a personal perspective. You know, that's why we came into the mix with Warmly, because how are you going to, from a B2B perspective, because B2C is not going to work, right? Because sometimes it's a whole different strategy, two different strategies. And I think our speciality is B2B. If someone asked me to launch a B2C app, I wouldn't have a Scooby-Doo about where to, well, I would, but not to the extent that perhaps I would, they would want to hear. So, and then the fact that you can leverage and connect or email these folks who visit your site just became, we've had some amazing results. You know, we talk about a growth hack. It's a growth hack.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately that's what you buy. It's a growth hack, not just a tool or data. You buy a hack that typically is proven. It's the same how we grew. Like, no one was using LinkedIn for sales, by the way. It was predominantly for recruitment. You know? So it was a growth hack. It was new, it's unconventional. Why did we add email? Because just LinkedIn that was 2-3 years ago. You know, things are changing. So,
no, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just going to say go back to the data intent. Maybe at least I see data intent slightly different here, but I know we use Bombora and so forth, but it's just about back to, because where did Warmly get their traffic side? They got it either from advertisement, organic, or LinkedIn, right? Yeah. Whatever channels, but ultimately what you're doing with that intent data. So that's how it became useful. I mean, this is, you know, I don't know if that makes sense, but...
No, it does. And I might be wrongly roasting all intent providers. I mean, I think that those kinds of, like, what you're talking about, the on-site intent, is really valuable. I think that is like, there's nothing better than people that are on your site.
Exactly.
The thing that cracks me up is when you look at like we're a ZoomInfo customer. You look at like the ZoomInfo
and they're
websites,
selling data.
You know, yeah, I don't know who their provider is, so I don't want to slander anyone. But
okay, yeah.
But the thing that it was, I never bought it directly, right? I just got it because I got ZoomInfo and it was included.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, so how are you guys, like the guy explains to me how it works. You go on the website, they have, you know, they're doing it through Display Network and whatever other stuff they're doing there. But at the end of the day, it's like people reading articles. So I'm like, okay, well, we're a digital marketing company. Most digital marketers are reading a lot of blogs and a lot of websites about how to do digital marketing.
Yeah.
So how are you discerning people doing research inside these companies? And they always have a really cute answer, but at the end of the day, if you just boil it down, how could you know without some, you know, people went to your website or whatever it is?
Yeah.
I think it's an exaggerated marketing lingo a lot of them use, right? It's intent. It's so vague. It's like a legal term for, you know, someone walking in the street saying that's intent, but I'm walking, I don't know, to buy some shoes and not some clothes.
Yeah.
Like, it's just exaggerated, and they use it as a marketer. Sometimes you see intent as somebody who's visited, I don't know, like a CRM system,
right?
For example. But I think the accuracy of a lot of that data is just not there. We've done a lot of outreach based on data. So I agree, by the way, with your thoughts on intent in the past. Maybe it's evolved, you know, 6 Sense and others. Competition has led to innovation in the field, for example, as well, to actually have quality, because before they didn't. And when we tried, you know, Bombora or ZoomInfo partially, they're expensive, so we didn't really go with them. It just didn't yield, you know, to be honest. So instead, we just, you know, stuck to what technologies they use, something a bit more down to earth. Or we use our existing website traffic.
It's like implied intent.
Thank you.
Trademark.
Do you want to swap video guy with, with implied?
I get video guy, you get implied intent. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know.
But if we get out of here and I Google video guy and it exists, then you're definitely buying the curry.
All right, deal.
This is like a multi-threaded.
No, hey, that's how best deals in the world happen. Just you know, not a contract, just a gentleman's agreement. You know?
This is a nice segue though, on the off chance that our friend Paolo comes and kicks us out of here in 3 minutes. I don't think he will, but we've been talking a lot about growth hacks, and you gave your favorite one, which was the Twitter like and comment thing from back in the day. The thing that I think is interesting, we were talking about the growth hacks from back in the day, like this Twitter growth hack, right? And obviously something like that wouldn't work today for so many reasons, not the least of which being that it just wouldn't be possible because you'd get banned by Master Elon pretty fast.
Yeah.
So, and I think I've seen both of you posting in one way or another about kind of like 2023 growth strategies don't work, right? And oftentimes these growth hacks, they're so short-lived, and so you have to like constantly be ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious how you do that. Like, how do you keep finding these growth hacks that are going to work?
A mixture of both qualitative and quantitative. Right? Like, since that's been like a theme here, So, I mean, I'll start from my end, right? Just briefly, because normally it's just a lot of research. Like, I found the guys, I knew these guys were doing great, and I was like, this partner, you got a great tool here, you got a good thing on, let's create a hack here, right? So it's just a creative process.
What kind of research, though?
Just online, just search. I'm always searching, always researching, always reading, right? Like,
what are you reading?
Just everything and then anything, like where the future is.
But is it, are you scrolling LinkedIn? Are there any like publications you read? Are you on Reddit?
Publications, everything.
Okay.
Everywhere where I think I want to find the right information, right, or understand where things are going. That's how what I've done to come across, and also it's if you're predicting or trying to see the future or trying to understand, it's also an iterative process, by the way, right? You don't just always hit. It's a bit like getting the if you're a VC, you're investing in 10, 100 companies. Like, ultimately, when you hedge your bets and you want to go against one particular channel, one's going to stick and one's going to yield. So it's kind of that method as well, right? And that's, at least from my view, is you always have to constantly. Well, that's why they say you have to always keep abreast to the latest technologies, and that's what it is. You have to. Yeah. Most people just read a blog from your mainstream media. No, you go deep. Yeah. You go onto those Reddit threads. You go onto those X or Twitter. By the way, it's underrated. I really love X when it comes to new insights, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people from LinkedIn just syndicate the content that's on X. Because it's amazing, right? And I'm not a user, to be honest.
Of X or LinkedIn?
X. Yeah, like I think the content there is great.
Mean you're kind of like you're a scroller, but you don't post there?
Yeah, no, I research. It's a research for finding info, but I don't have a following or anything. Just because I focus on LinkedIn, for example, at least, and other things. So, but yeah, no, that's my view. Is that I think you just gotta be a good researcher. I mean, if you come from academia in the past or in research, you kind of know where to look, And I know it sounds very simple and basic, but most people don't do it. They don't search until page 39, until they can understand if they have everything they want to have.
Well,
feel
I think
content.
To that point, I think a lot of people. But I think a lot of people, they sort of spend all their time researching and not enough time executing or testing. And so I'm curious, how do you take all this stuff that you're getting from these Reddit threads and X, and like how do you know which ones to go and run an experiment or implement or test out?
So this is where I pass the baton.
Nice.
This is where we make a very good team, because
are you just like you're slacking Chintan all the time? Hey, check out this link. Hey, check this out. Hey,
and then he does it to someone else. So it's so it's not like I'm.
So I'll tell you. Yeah. So the thing is, like, I think back in days, as we. It's an evolution, right? As we move forward, some things which weren't structured and organized are getting organized. What I mean by this is acquisition was one of the biggest issues probably 10 years back, and businesses and growth hack mostly were related to those acquisition. Like, hey, let me try this branding, let me try this integration, cross integration, or let me try this paid media, or let me do this hacks, different things. But now I think the challenge is not around the acquisition. Challenge is around the retention. And why I talk about this retention is because the growth hack is going to be around the retention, and your growth hack is going to be around your product. So So it is easy to bring the people into the ecosystem, but it's difficult to retain them and
Make sure they're a
make
good
sure that
customer.
they are a customer within the ecosystem.
Right.
And that's where your research and development comes in, related to new features, or how can you build that stickiness in your product by bringing the feature, the convenience, right? Like, for example, 5 years before, the trend was, not 5 years, I would say 10 years before, all the startups, they were like exploded because they were just focusing on convenience, whatever we used to do, but they are making it sure that it happens digitally, like delivery services, for example. After COVID, there were other services that came up, which is again convenience to the next level
Yeah.
in a remote world. And this convenience is nothing but the product, right? It's an extension of some ecosystem already, right? So coming back to the same thing, growth hack at the retention level is all about doing the different research, understanding what's happening, how we can bring in that convenience within the product for the user so they can stay there, they can engage, they can retain within that ecosystem. And to answer your question around like how we kind of like put everything together, this is very simple, very basic way is CDP. What I mean by CDP is like customer development pipeline. So all the research is going to go into your pool of that pipeline. And then we as a business decide that which feature or which idea or growth hack we want to pursue and bringing to the product, right? So growth hack to me is a very fancy and sexy term, but it used to be at the acquisition level, probably 10 years back. Now the acquisition problem is pretty much sorted, I guess. I think the problem now is the retention.
It's this two-pronged thing. It's like it's not just about optimizing for who's going to convert the best, because then they might just come in, especially something
Now,
that's quick to
exactly.
spin up and relatively low,
Exactly.
not huge investment. They might just be gone in the next month. And
Exactly.
Then
Now you can run the ads and bring the people, right? If you're good with the numbers, if you could run some models and bring the people into the ecosystem.
Wait, are you trying to say that you have to have a good product for this shit to work?
No, I'm
That's
not.
it's true, but but I can go with Chintan because I think in order for you to understand if you have the ideal ICP, especially if you're product led, right? You're not speaking with these guys at enterprise level where, you'll end up knowing their whole family tree until they buy, right? It's more to do with how can you get to the value proposition fast enough with that channel.
Yeah, and then prove it with the product.
Yes, and then prove it, and they stick around, and you're doing that with data. Not as humans. As data, have they done this events? If you're tracking through Mixpanel or Google Analytics, for example, or not? Because you can if we I think we had this data when we were discussing. If you had the Facebook or Meta, you're gonna change me now, and that Facebook ads or even organic, and then you understand, okay, where's the churn? Because we've seen where we've had Meta advertisement, which is non-intent, rather cold, and the retention rate of Google. This was even before perhaps we worked together, and we looked at the retention and also the expansion rate, which is like the quality and the size of the company through that channel. I know. So I think, and then we found that naturally that Google had, because it's intent, a budget, which is the conversion rate would increase, or the close rates would be a lot higher, just because for that. But I think back to like trends and what's not working, it's based on that data. That's why I think ultimately, if we know that that channel is going to be disregarded and cancelled out, because if they're not expanding or growing, or your LTV decreases, because you can tell if you chart Mogul, for example, you'll know instantly, and it's attributed it, because that's how we track the full flow.
Yeah.
And then we have to reverse engineer that and say, what's the lowest LTV? Because if you use specific filters, because what we've done is attributed revenue, even in chart Mogul, for example, through ads or this campaign, even campaign level, never mind just as Google as a massive channel, because you can get long long term, no,
Long tail?
long tail. Thank you. You know, you haven't worked in marketing for so long. I mean, I used to know this stuff at the back of my head, like long tail. I was like, God damn. Thank you. Long tail keywords versus short term keywords, because some will be content based in search, which is slightly less intent,
Yeah.
or something with that defines solution software or whatever it is. And then if you channel it through all the way to Chopmongo, reverse engineer it, you'll understand the retention levels differ significantly. So back to like at least strategy perspective, it's not just research or just retention. I think times are changing now, right? Constantly we have AI now, for example. How's that going to impact strategies for the future? For example, like
How much time do we have?
no, sorry, are we over talking?
No, I was joking with the open the AI rabbit hole. We're going to be here till 9 o'clock.
You're
We're
right.
going to miss
You're
the
right.
reservation.
I don't want to.
Yeah, I think like exactly.
Yeah.
And the same thing, Warmly, for example, like,
Yeah.
Warmly doing great job bringing the people into the ecosystem, but now they are branching out like integration with Salesflow. So kind of growth hack
Right.
by Warmly to, now they capitalize on the people. They make sure that the customer stays with us, because it's not just about enriching the data now. They can do the different things as well via email, via LinkedIn, prospecting. So I think in my opinion now the growth hack is more about like building that convenience, micro convenience, I would say, or the nano convenience.
What do you mean by that?
Which is nothing but like the product features, like micro features and nano features, which can give convenience to users. So eventually they will stay longer with you. Hope you like.
You can have something that is seemingly a small feature, but in the right sort of cohort, it's a huge feature.
Exactly.
Have you guys ever added a specific feature and then just seen like a dramatic uptick from one, like a step change from one, kind of what you're talking about, these like niche features or micro feature or something that surprised you there? I'd imagine you roll out a lot of features, or over time, having done this as long as you have.
Well,
I'm trying to think. Again, for me, it was back when we already still a year into the product. It was just back in the Zapier integration, for example, in the early days. Like you could do so much with it.
Yeah, especially
It's a
for
webhook.
growth hackers. They love Zapier.
That would be one. Like I can really made a big impact. I mean, obviously for a lot of other reasons, but that was great. I mean, it was the quickest development we made compared to the whole system. Took us like a week, and it never had such a big impact for the product that was taking years to develop. And that just really. And there's other small hacks as well that we would develop in the past just for influencers, by the way, creators, who would impact our growth in the future, because that's where a lot of growth came from as well, is working with thought leaders and people who really loved our tool and would share about it. So we would try and solve their problems, and then they would talk about it, even though it doesn't solve their users' problems, by the way. Sometimes people forget that if you want to work with influencers and others as a growth hack of the future, is solve the problems of influencers who will use your product. If they would use it just because they need it, not because they're users, then you can have a lot of growth there too. Slightly separate, but we created, sometimes focused our feature sets where we created features just for them, and that's how it was used a lot, because then they would push it.
That makes sense. So I running up on time here. I'm curious. I'm gonna ask Chintan, the Grim Reaper, but I'm curious your thoughts too, Besnik, having obviously run a lot of experiments inside of Salesflow, also been inside of a lot, involved with in various capacities, lots of other businesses. I know you guys are advisors and so on. So it's not like you're looking at it from one lens.
Yeah.
What are there any growth strategies that come to mind that people just, you see them and you're like, just cut it, just stop doing that? Like, the sort of the 2023 playbook kind of stuff, like what we were talking about, that's just not working anymore. Are there any that come to mind that are like especially egregious, or is it hard to give it a specific one? Is it more philosophical?
I think it's hard because the couple of things. Because we do a lot of experiments, of course, but our experiments are of course, on the ad side as well, on the performance marketing side, and also on the product side. So we do have a learning on what's working, what's not working, and idea is to reach that cap that, okay, we want to hit that 20% or we want to hit that 25%. How do we reach to that 20%, 25%? Yes, of course, there will be a lot of things that we will be doing that's not going to work in that. But one of the things that I think, and I can share here is, I wouldn't say the growth strategy because it's a very broad term, but I would say that moving forward, a couple of things that's going to work is like the product-led growth. That's going to even streamline, because product-led growth, it's still a broad term. But in that, we will be looking at like signal-led sales, product qualified leads, for example. What I mean by product qualified leads is like, you're not gonna like marketing qualified lead and sales qualified lead. You have a product qualified lead. Now that product qualified leads are the leads basically where they have an aha moment. The users are having an aha moment that, hey, we like the product. Now we want to buy your product, right? And to convert them, that process is gonna be done by product led marketing, which is happening inside your product, and that's where your remarketing ads are gonna come as well outside, even though they are a user or product tools, which is eventually it was just used for showing the product here and there. So what I mean is like the growth strategy is a very broad term, but as we move to 2024, 2025, in my opinion, it will be like very streamlined, very behavior based, very intent. That's what it's gonna look like. The broad thing is not gonna work. Like,
that makes sense.
So that's
The distribution mechanisms are just
Exactly.
so powerful at this point that getting in
Exactly.
front of people isn't the challenge. It's getting in front of the right people is kind of what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Hot take, Besnik?
No, I was just gonna, I totally agree because I think the way to look at it is more both also sort of philosophical, where most people are sticking to whatever's working last year, and they're just staying there. I think what people are doing is that they are not changing, or pivoting or testing enough. Like they're sticking to last year's results and they're not actually experimenting new channels. So they become sort of I don't know, hesitant to continue experimenting because they found one channel that works. And I think one wrong strategy that I've had personally in the past, but also when I speak to a lot of businesses, they're sticking to one particular area that think that it's good enough when it's not. There's other channels that you could be doubling your growth, doubling your size, for example, from that perspective. And also, I've become less and less rigid over the years because I'm starting to understand how agile and fast you have to be. And I think most businesses out there that are looking into strategy, again, is back to, hey, even for me, I'm thinking, well, we got PLG, but why? Let's think about a freemium. We're talking about a freemium model. We're talking about how do we, test, adjust a sub product completely to do versus within the app versus completely separate. So we're really trying to have an unorthodox approach to everything that we do, and just having I was just finished sort of Elon Musk's book, and he look at the first principles of something. So imagine you're just doing it from the beginning, and you're starting a business again, whilst even though you haven't, and just reverse engineering everything you're doing, and having this mindset or this mind frame of always taking everything apart and starting from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I'm a strong believer in that. For example, and that's why I can run fast. We can run really, really fast. Even that's why I love the bootstrap mentality, is that I can choose the pace and speed I want to go at. Sometimes you have to go really slow, sometimes really, really fast on the spot. So I think that's why I'd say most people make is that they linger in existing tactics too long, that they're not quick enough to these tactics, these channels. If I saw Twitter, for example, or Facebook groups, or Chintan is seeing a variety ones in advertisement, we're doubling down because it works and very fast, because it might not have the same volume as it did last year, for example. Then you missed it. Then your window of growth is gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it goes back to also kind of what we were talking about earlier, and what you have to, if you want to be able to do this stuff effectively and drive the outcome, which is obviously the whole point, is driving a exceptional outcome. It's not just about having the ideas. It's not just about doing the research. It's not just even about executing it. It's you have to set the culture that this is how we run an experiment, we find something that works, operationalize it, move on to the next one. Operationalize it, move on to the next one. If you're resting on the laurels, at some point it's going to stop working, and then you're going to be holding the bag.
It's much easier to build a strategy around the customers who are within your ecosystem. So it's important that once they come in to your ecosystem, you can offer them different kind of features and product, and it's much easier to build a strategy using them and with them in the ecosystem.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think before all the cameras die and the audio recording stops and Paolo comes and kicks us out, maybe we call it a podcast. What do you guys think?
Hey,
this has been a blast.
It's been amazing, actually. We've not been stopped talking. It's been like 3 hours actually before the recording started. So thank you for having us.
Thank you for
having
out
us.
And joining me on the very first world tour.
Next time we're traveling to you.
Yeah, come down to Puerto Rico.
No, I draw any excuse to get away from the British weather, because you see it's cold in the spring. So
yeah, I mean now you can go on a Caribbean vacation, and you can call it a business trip. You come into the office. We have some extra desks.
It's done. Are we making a promise? Because I'm willing to do it.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, it's like record it on the podcast. By when are you coming down? And if not, you have to like eat some really hot sauce or something.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, cool, awesome. Well, I'm gonna link to all your stuff in the show notes. Salesflow. If anyone wants to get customers, you're an idiot if you haven't signed up. What else? Follow Besnik on X. I'm kidding. Follow him on LinkedIn.
Yeah, on X
and Facebook.
So yeah, literally, if you're not in B2B, follow me on Facebook and something that I don't use like X. But no, I think, to be honest, like LinkedIn's always a powerhouse. I've met many people who are just not even leveraging it. You'd be surprised. Yeah. So yeah, follow me there, and our website is salesflow.io. And we've been writing a lot of content equally with Chintan. Yeah. So both of us, really. So
dropping knowledge bombs on there. I've been liking it.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Like, I just beginning for the first time to do a lot more. I've been a little bit more on the back end ops in the last 5 years, really focused on product and other things beyond the thought leadership piece.
You're like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon.
I'm glad you said it.
That
if I
was
said
nice
that,
one.
I would really, really bad.
This is awesome.
Sweet.
Cool. Should we go get some curry?
I'm starting to get hungry.
I'm ready for it.
Only a sandwich, or maybe a beer first, because we still have an hour, and curry always tastes better after a beer.